What's playing out here from NAT?
I mean, it's a NAT report that talks about how funds have flowed illicitly through, and majorly through the oil and gas sector, which is understandably so. If you look at some excerpts of the report, it doesn't necessarily say how the funds has flowed, but I think this should be a trigger for agencies such as the EFCC for further investigation. I would expect EFCC should work with NAT on how, and this essentially also has to do with the posture of the government, the incompetent government, with regards to anti-corruption. So if the EFCC can actually work with NAT to investigate how some of these illicit funds have flowed, then perhaps we may see a bit of, we may see some prosecution and attempts to recover these illicit fund flow. For me, I think NAT's report serves as a basis for whatever investigative efforts the EFCC can take.
When we talk about transparency in the oil and gas sector, most of the time we tend to focus on the national oil company. But then, do you think the satellite needs to go wider to the other private private players in the sector?
Yes. Don't forget that for corruption or even illicit fund flow, there's always a receiver and also a giver. So I don't think the searchlight should stop at the national oil company. The searchlight should also extend to other oil operators, or private operators, to the extent that they may have acted against the stipulated law with regards to either corruption or money laundering, as it were.
All right, then. But we see that we're seeing the second term from President Buhari starting, and then the oil sector has been one of the major sectors that we've talked a lot about corruption in that space. And this is the president coming in and saying talking about the fact that he's going to be a champion for fighting corruption. Do you think it should start rolling heads from this sector?
If you ask me, I would say yes. The posture of the current government, which is also going to be the next government for the next 4 years, has been that it's a government that does not tolerate corruption. But we've seen attempts to prosecute certain persons that have operated or that have activities in the sector, but there's been a bit of a slowdown, perhaps maybe because of the Nigerian justice system. We've not seen any conviction, as it were. Most of those cases are still in court. We need to see some form of conviction before we can actually have faith in the government that is actually against corruption. Attempts, we should also not beat up the government because they've made some attempts to prosecute a few people, but I think what we need at this point is conviction.
All right, then let's look at another tricky issue, which is the petroleum industry bill. It's been up for decades now, trying to get that passed. We've seen what different senates try to see that this goes on, but then now we're going to get a 9th Senate come on board. How do you think they should go about getting this bill passed?
This current Senate or this current National Assembly actually tried to pass the governance bill and forwarded the same for action by the president, which was withheld by the president for a few reasons. One of such is the amount which is supposed to accrue to the regulatory commission, which in the view of the president is significantly higher. Also issues around the Petroleum Equalization Fund, which the president also believes is against the government policy. Those are some of the issues which has been raised. But I would think that if these issues can quickly be sorted out between the presidency or the executive and the National Assembly, if they can work together even before the end of this current tenure of the current legislators rather, we should be able to see a governance bill passed and accepted too. That is if both arms of government are willing to cooperate. So that is on the governance side. We still have the administration bill, fiscal bill, and also the host community bill, which are yet to be passed by the National Assembly. I don't think that will go through before the end of this legislative cycle. So what would happen is that there would be, the whole process needs to start again if we have a 9th Senate, as you have said. But because of the level of work that has been put or has been done into these draft bills, if we have a new set of legislators, I would envisage that the process should be quicker and faster.
I can imagine people who are sitting at home watching and thinking, but we've heard this so many times. What's really different this time around?
Truth is, I mean, there's nothing different. It's just a question of if the legislators want to pass it, or even if government as a whole would include both even the legislators and the executive arm. Like I said, the committee or even the group that have put together these recent bills have done a lot of work, and I think the responsibility actually lies on both the legislators and the executive arm to ensure this is done quickly.
Okay, finally, let me take you up on the recent news about the federal government and the back taxes they're trying to get the oil majors to pay. You know, when you make of that, how do you we've already had Shell come out to say this is going to affect, you know, some of the projects, the Bunga project and a couple of other things, you know, because we have a lot of, you know, first the elections have made a lot of companies put aside their final investment decisions, you know, and then by how much do you think this is going to shake up the industry and investment flows into that sector?
I would envisage that the tax claim which you refer to has to do with the new, the Supreme Court terms of settlement that was entered into between some states in the Niger Delta, which was led by, I think, Rivers State and Bayelsa, against the federal government, with regards to renegotiation of the terms of the PSC. And under the PSC Act, there's a provision which says that when oil prices go beyond $20 per barrel, government should renegotiate the PSCs with the IOCs. And I mean, as far back as I think the Obasanjo regime, we actually had the oil benchmark go beyond $20, not even $100. I mean, 20. I think during that period it was between $22 and $23. I mean, $23 per barrel. And renegotiation wasn't done. So we have, give or take, about 10, 12 years down the line, government now says it wants to renegotiate based on the terms of settlement from the Supreme Court. And now the notices of renegotiation of the terms have been sent to the IOCs. It definitely affects economics of doing business by the IOCs, because we are looking at a back claim of, for example, in excess of $20 billion.
All right, then.
Yeah.